My name is Sana Walker, I'm 35 years old. My family and I, including my husband Sean and our 5-year-old daughter, live a peaceful life in the suburbs. Sean and I met at a friend's wedding 10 years ago. At that time, Sean was the most handsome man at the venue, and I was immediately drawn to him. Since we got married, I believe we've been living happily, supporting each other. Sean is always cheerful and has a knack for entertaining those around him. That's why I think we've been able to build a good relationship. To an outsider, our daily life might seem like a typical peaceful family life. Every morning, I wake up at 5 a.m., finish the housework, send our daughter to kindergarten, and then head to my part-time job. After coming home, I cook dinner, and after bathing and putting our daughter to bed, the day's tiredness really hits me. In this ordinary daily life, I've recently started to notice some changes in Sean's behavior. It started a few months ago. He began coming home late occasionally, and it gradually became more frequent. There were also times he'd call and say, "I'm gonna be late, go ahead and eat without me." I could always hear a different kind of fatigue in his voice, and I started to worry that something was bothering him. Then, one evening after dinner, as we were relaxing and watching TV in the living room, Sean suddenly brought up the topic of the safe. "Sana, how much is in the safe again?" I gasped internally. "Huh? Why are you asking that?" I pretended to be surprised while I watched his expression. He had never been concerned about the safe's contents before. "Just wondering. I've been thinking a lot about money stuff recently," Sean replied with a somewhat forced smile. I felt a bit uneasy hearing that. Actually, Sean had a period of debt in the past. I found out about Sean's debt before we got married. It was gambling related and had climbed to a considerable amount. On the day we promised to marry, Sean confessed to me with a serious look on his face. "Sana, actually, I have a gambling debt of $60,000. His expression conveyed a determination to face reality without running away. I was momentarily lost for words, but moved by Sean's sincerity, I decided to believe his firm promise that he would not gamble anymore. "Sean, promise me you'll never gamble again. If you can do that, I'll take on the debt for you." "Sana, thank you so much. Of course, I'll never do it again. For our future together." Thus, I cleared Sean's debts before we got married. It was the start of our new beginning. We have a small safe in our bedroom. It was something I brought with me when we got married. We hadn't discussed the safety in depth until now. However, seeing Sean's unusual interest in the safe now, I began to wonder if he was keeping his promise. Could he be gambling again? Such fears crossed my mind, but I thought, no way, he wouldn't break his promise. The next day, when I happened to look at the safe, there were signs it had been moved slightly. "Sean, did you touch the safe yesterday?" "Oh, I was just looking." "Don't worry, I didn't mess with anything." Sean answered easily, but there was an awkwardness in his voice that seemed unnatural. As I began to worry about Sean's changed behavior, I found a receipt from a high-end restaurant that had fallen out of his jacket pocket. "Sean, what's this receipt?" When I asked, he casually replied, "Oh, that's just from a business dinner. Nothing to worry about," but his eyes were avoiding mine. Doubts began to grow in my mind, and I struggled between wanting to believe him and my suspicions. One day, as I was preparing dinner, our daughter Cindy came in. "Mom, is there money in the bedroom safe? How do you open the safe? Where is the key?" "Huh? Cindy, why?" "Daddy told me to ask you. He said if I found out, he'd buy me something I like." I can't believe it. Using our daughter to ask such things. Seeing Sean's unusual interest in the safe, I thought, maybe Sean is hiding something after all. My suspicions only grew. And I made up my mind. I decided to tell Sean about the contents of the safe. When Sean came home late again today, I said, "Hey, you've been curious about it, right? The safe contents. I guess there's about $1.2 million in savings, huh?" Sean's reaction changed immediately. "Really? Is there really $1.2 million in the safe?" His voice tone rose, and his gaze sharpened suddenly. It's from before we got married. But why are you concerned about the amount?
Nah, it's all right. It's more than I thought. This means we're safe,
Sean said, suddenly in a good mood, humming a tune as he headed to the bath. I have savings from before our marriage. It's all due to my consistent efforts. This money is the fruit of my savings and investments I started after graduating from college. After graduation, I got a job at a corporation and decided to reliably save half of my monthly salary for the future. I managed the rest of my income for living expenses. I rarely ate out, always cooked at home, and spent little on clothes or entertainment. Not just saving, I also started investing to build assets, carefully diversifying into stocks and government bonds while avoiding risks. This is how I increased my savings. By the time we got married, I already had $1.2 million saved. Since getting married, I've been too busy to invest, but I'm thinking of starting again when things settle down. Late that night, I suddenly woke up on the living room sofa. The clock was just striking at 2 a.m. Oh, I fell asleep on the sofa. The house was quiet, only the sound of the clock's hands seemed to echo. Crash. However, that silence was suddenly broken by a noise. I held my breath and listened intently in the direction of the sound.
Are you okay? Be quiet,
came Sean's tense voice. Then, immediately responding to that voice, a woman's voice said, "Hurry up, before someone comes." I slowly stood up and quietly moved toward the direction of the sound. When I peeked into the living room through the slightly open door, I saw Sean and a woman holding the safe. They were lifting the safe, trying to take it out of the house. "Hurry, this way. The car is just a bit further," the woman urged Sean. "I know. It's heavy, help me a bit." Sean's voice was tinged with irritation. The two of them were carefully carrying the safe, and from their actions, it was clear some important plan was underway. Seeing this scene shook me deeply. I had been waiting for this moment. I immediately checked the hidden camera to confirm that this entire scene was being recorded. I instantly knew the woman helping him with the safe was his mistress, Mary. Mary was a colleague of Sean's from his company. I had seen Sean whispering on the phone in the bedroom after coming out of the bath, thanks to a hidden camera I had secretly installed there.
"Mary, it's me. You know, my wife told me how much is in the safe. Guess how much? $1.2 million, $1.2 million. Isn't that crazy? Why does she have that much money? And about that plan we talked about last time. Yeah, the one about taking the safe and running. We're doing it tonight at 2 a.m. This will clear my debts. With $1.2 million, I can buy you anything you like. So, come to my house by car before 2 a.m. Keep it on the down low." His voice was clear, so I was well aware of the plan to steal the safe at 2 a.m. and escape. Just as planned, I had been plotting this with my best friend Mirabelle. On days when Sean came home late, I would invite Mirabelle over. Sit at the kitchen table, and while drinking coffee, we would discuss how to use the fact that I actually had $1.2 million in savings. "Sana, do you really have $1.2 million? That's incredible."
I saved it up during my single days, investing along the way. "So, what are you planning to do?" Sean has shown an unusual interest in my safe. I want to see how he reacts when he knows about this savings.
It's like watching a TV drama. What's the plan?
First, I'll test how much Sean bites on the safe. I'll deliberately leak that there's $1.2 million in it and watch his reaction. And if he really bites like a fish, what will you do? I've hidden a small camera in the safe to record the moment Sean opens it. I'll confront him with the recorded evidence. If he tries to take the safe, I'll track him with the GPS tracker installed and call the police. That's quite a plan, Sana. But isn't it pretty risky? There is a risk, but I think this will let me see Sean's true nature. I wish he hadn't started showing interest in the money. But it's best if nothing happens. Understood. Even if something unexpected happens, I'll be there for you. Thank you, Mirabelle. As Sean and Mary loaded the safe into the car and hastily left, I quietly watched from the window and took a deep breath. Then I picked up my smartphone and dialed the police. This moment of calling was what I had been planning for 2 weeks. "Hello, police. How can I help you?" From the other end of the call, a calm voice of a police officer came through. "My safe has been stolen. By my husband and his mistress." My voice was calm, but inside, intense emotions were swirling. "Please provide your address and name." "We will dispatch a patrol car immediately," the police officer responded. I gave my address and name. "It's Sanaa Walker. My husband and a woman have taken the safe and left." The whole scene of them loading the safe into the car was captured by a hidden camera. There's also a GPS tracker in the safe, which makes it traceable. The officer seemed a bit surprised but responded, "Understood. Please also send us the GPS information. We will start the investigation immediately." After hanging up the phone, I sat on the sofa and confirmed that everything was going according to plan. I couldn't help but laugh as I looked at the divorce papers Sean had left behind and a note with his words. "Just as I thought." Well, how dramatic indeed. I muttered to myself as I picked up the divorce papers he had left. His actions were all within my expectations. The safe indeed appeared to contain a lot of money, but in reality, it only held some papers, a GPS tracker, and a hidden camera installed to capture the moment Sean opened the safe. I wouldn't actually keep such a large sum in a safe that could be carried away. It's in a bank safe deposit box. Silly people. I had anticipated his plan and taken steps ahead of them. Let's see how far this foolish husband and his mistress will go. As I murmured, I opened the GPS app on my smartphone and checked their location. The screen showed their car moving farther into the suburbs. Sean and Mary's car stopped at a secluded, rundown motel in the outskirts. The GPS tracker pointed to a location ideal for an escape, isolated from the hustle and bustle of the town. Surrounded by trees, and perfect for hiding without attracting any attention. However, the police pursuit team, using the GPS data, had pinpointed their location accurately. The team cautiously approached the motel and confirmed they had entered a room before initiating action. "Field units, take positions and stand by," the commander instructed over the radio. Meanwhile, Sean and Mary, unaware of anything, were soaking in the relief of their escape. As soon as Sean entered the room, he sat on the bed and sighed deeply. "We've finally made it this far. We should be safe now." Mary, still looking anxious, peered out the window. "Are you sure it's really safe? What if someone saw us?"
"It's fine. No one comes to a place like this. Let's rest here for a bit and plan our next move. With all this money, we can gamble again and buy whatever we want." "That sounds great. I'd love to go on a trip abroad." The dreams of the two who had stolen $1.2 million expanded. But their dream was short-lived. Knock, knock, knock. Just then, the door was knocked on forcefully. "It's the police." "Open the door," came a voice, and when the curtains were pulled back, several police officers were waiting outside. Sean and Mary's complexions changed instantly. What's going on?" Why? Why are the police here?"
Sean quickly glanced at the safe, but before he could do anything, the police's voice continued, "Open up, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Sean slowly approached the door and opened it. "Are you Sean and Mary? Please come with us to the station."
"How did you find us here?"
"There was a GPS tracker in the safe. We've been tracking all your movements."
"Could Sanaa have?"
Sean muttered under his breath, his face filled with a sense of powerlessness. "Sean, Mary, you are being arrested on suspicion of fraud. Anything you've done can be used as evidence in court. You also have the right to call an attorney." They were taken away in a police vehicle, and their attempt to flee came to an end. At home, I heard the news and felt relieved that everything had gone according to plan, as I prepared for a new step towards the future. The next morning, while making my usual morning coffee, I picked up the TV remote and turned on the news, which immediately started covering last night's incident. Last night, a unique theft occurred at a motel in the suburbs. A husband and his mistress were arrested by the police while attempting to flee with the family's safe. The wife had placed a GPS in the safe, allowing for immediate tracking, the news reported. The screen showed Sean and Mary being placed into a police vehicle. Sean looked regretful, his eyes downcast. Well, they're instantly famous now, I thought, as the ridiculous affair couple would undoubtedly be laughed at by the public. Just then, Cindy came running from the next room.
Mom, why is Dad on TV?
Was he arrested?
Why? Who is that woman?
Her eyes were filled with curiosity, and she looked up at me, not understanding the content of the news. I gently stroked Cindy's head and said, Dad made a big mistake. But it's okay because you have Mom. Cindy nodded a bit worriedly. Really? It's okay because I have Mom, right? She replied cheerfully.
Let's have breakfast.
As I headed to the kitchen, the news continued further reporting. As expected, the company will not employ criminals. The two are likely to be fired. This incident, with significant social impact, will keep everyone watching what happens to them next. While nibbling on bread, Cindy asked quietly, Is Dad not coming home? Dad has to go away for a while, but let's do our best together with Mom, I assured her. Cindy smiled in understanding. Okay, if it's just the two of us with Mom, I'll be fine, and she regained her spirits. That day, I went to file for divorce. Meanwhile, at the police station, Sean and Mary were desperately trying to justify their actions. We really needed the money. There were family issues. Regardless of family circumstances, stealing cannot be justified. Please explain the specific circumstances that led to the action of taking the safe, the investigator pressed Sean. Finally, Sean began to speak. Actually, we have a large debt. It was all to repay it. I thought the $1.2 million my wife had would end our suffering. Every day was like hell because of the debt collectors, added Mary. Do you think having debt justifies stealing? No, I understand that, but the pressure to repay was just too overwhelming. Our credit card payments were snowballing. Committing a crime to repay debts is never permissible. What happens next will be determined in court. Remember, your actions carry corresponding responsibilities.
Yes.
Later, an investigation by their company revealed that not only did they have gambling debts, but they had also misused company funds. Naturally, the company decided to fire them immediately. This news was also reported, and Sean and Mary became infamous public figures. Sean and Mary were granted bail with probation. However, they now faced the burden of their debts, claims for damages from the company, and demands for alimony and child support. A few days later, the doorbell rang at my house. Yes? When I opened the door, there stood Sean, my former husband.
What do you want now? Sana, I've been thinking. I want to start over. Us, as a family again.
As Sean began, something inside me snapped. Start over? After you betrayed us and destroyed everything? Do you even understand how much Cindy and I have suffered? At that moment, Cindy peeked out from behind me and asked Sean.
Dad, why did you abandon us? Why did you take Mom's money and run away with another woman?
Sean was at a loss for words, simply staring at Cindy. Regret and sadness were evident on Sean's face, but Cindy's small voice carried clear anger and disappointment. I added more.
Sean, it's too late. You're gone from our lives. For Cindy's sake, don't come here again. I've deleted you from our lives.
Sean was devastated by the words and stood speechless. Then, weakly facing me and Cindy, he murmured, I'm sorry, please forgive me.
It doesn't change anything now. For Cindy's sake, please don't disturb our lives anymore. I'm begging you.
Those words weighed heavily on Sean. He slowly began to back away and left without looking back. As I watched Sean walk away, I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. I was painfully aware of the irretrievable nature of time. After Sean left, Cindy and I held hands and vowed to move forward together. The next day, Mirabelle came to my house. The doorbell rang.
Oh, Mirabelle. Come in.
I have something to discuss with you, Sana. I think it's time for me to step in. We need to talk about how much alimony and child support to demand from Sean and Mary for Cindy's future. It has to be a substantial amount. Leave this to me, I'm your lawyer, after all. Mirabelle, thank you. I really appreciate it. While spreading out some documents, Mirabelle continued to explain. Legally, alimony is recognized as compensation for the emotional damage caused by Sean. Furthermore, I plan to calculate child support including educational expenses until Cindy reaches adulthood. The next day, Mirabelle called Sean and Mary to a cafe. Hello, Sean, Mary. You said you had something about Sana? What is it? Why did she want me to come along? What's this about? Then, Mirabelle showed her attorney's business card. Wait, Mirabelle, you're a lawyer. I will be representing Sana moving forward. Any dealings with Sana will be handled by me. Mirabelle started speaking with a cool demeanor. Let's get straight to the discussion about alimony and child support. No, we don't have any money. We still have debts and damages to pay. We can't possibly afford alimony and child support. What are you talking about? You can't use past mistakes or debts as an excuse to refuse. As a lawyer, and as Sana's friend, I aim for a fair resolution. Mary continued tearfully. But we simply don't have the means to pay. Mirabelle answered calmly. That's no excuse. You both need to take responsibility for the harm you've caused to Sana and Cindy. Then Mirabelle presented specific figures. You both committed the crime of stealing from your wife's safe. You will each pay $60,000 in a lump sum as alimony. Sean, you will also pay $1,000 monthly for educational expenses. This is the minimum responsibility required of you. Please sign this contract. I will manage it strictly, so there's no escaping. If you try to run, I'll sell these rights somewhere, and it would be in your best interest not to flee.
That's impossible. We can't possibly pay such an amount.
Sean and Mary were overwhelmed but could not refuse. Later, Mirabelle called me. Sana, everything went smoothly. Sean and Mary agreed. This will secure Cindy's future a bit. Mirabelle, thank you so much. Having you by my side is incredibly reassuring. I, too, must keep pushing forward with Cindy. Sean and Mary's lives became exceedingly tough. They both started walking a hard life to manage living expenses and debt repayment. Sean worked double jobs, sweating at a factory early in the morning and at a construction site at night. The factory job during the day was physically and mentally demanding, and the night construction work was dangerous, causing Sean's fatigue to accumulate daily. Meanwhile, Mary began working at a nightclub. It was a world unfamiliar to her, and the late-night job dealing with customers was a significant physical and mental burden. When the exhausted pair met in their small apartment, the atmosphere quickly turned sour.
When will this end? I'm sick of this miserable life every single day. I didn't ask for this life either. But remember, it was you who started this. Your gambling addiction started it all. Don't pin this all on me. You're just as much to blame.
The two sat on the floor, silent, as time painfully ticked by. I want to end this life as soon as possible. Their days were a continuous cycle of labor and debt, with no end in sight to their repayment schedule. However, it was a situation of their own making. Only by continuing to pay for their mistakes could they hope to atone for their past actions. Once a couple who loved each other enough to flee together, their relationships with colleagues, friends, and relatives had since crumbled, leaving them now only with each other to share their hardships and pain. After the ordeal with Sean, I had moved on and taken a step towards a new life. I quit my part-time job and made the decision to pursue my long-held dream of becoming an investor. Though I had paused my investment activities for a long time, the knowledge I continued to learn was now ready to be put to use. One day, while having coffee with Mirabelle at a cafe, I said, "Mirabelle, I've actually quit my part-time job and decided to go independent as an investor."
Really? That's amazing, Sana. I'm sure you'll be successful. When did you start?
I've already started. In fact, I've resumed the investment activities I had put on hold. The things I've continued learning are really paying off now.
Sana, you're really smart. It's great you can work from home, especially with Cindy still being young.
Yes, Cindy is still small, so I want to spend as much time with her as possible. That's why working from home on my investments is ideal for me. As Mirabelle sipped her coffee, she asked with interest, "What exactly are your investments focused on?" "Mainly stocks and real estate. I've always been interested in real estate, so I've made small investments in a few projects. I'm carefully managing the risks while closely monitoring the results." That's just like you, Sana. Always planning and proceeding calmly. I wish I could get involved in something with you. Of course, if you have a good idea, let's do it together. It would be fun working with you, Mirabelle. Later, I was in my home office, reading documents on my computer until Cindy returned from school. The screen displayed market analysis data, which I studied intently. In the evening, when Cindy came back from school, she greeted me.
"I'm home." "Welcome back, Cindy." "Mom, what were you doing today?" "I was working on my new job. But I was most looking forward to you coming home." "Mom, thank you. I want to be like you when I grow up."
I smiled genuinely.
"That would make me happy. Let's learn lots of things together."
That night, after putting Cindy to bed, I sat at the desk in the living room. Before diving into the documents spread out on the desk, I took a moment to reflect on the past. The hard days with Sean, his betrayal, and the struggles that followed. All of these shaped who I am today. As the aroma of warm coffee filled the room, I took a deep breath and acknowledged how I had overcome the difficulties. It hadn't been an easy journey, but all of it was now the source of my strength. Confident that the trials of the past had made me stronger, I was steadily walking the path to success as an investor, determined to secure Cindy's future and my independence. And I felt a profound relief and joy that everything was going according to plan. My new life was possible because I had overcome those challenges.
"I can't stand you. Not your attitude, not your words, none of it."
Ever since I became pregnant with our second daughter, Joan, my mother-in-law, has somehow adopted a confrontational demeanor. I couldn't hide my surprise at the drastic change. But that's another issue entirely. I couldn't suppress my anger, thinking about our home being left in shambles. And to involve our eldest daughter. Unforgivable as a parent. Absolutely, I won't forgive. Am I just supposed to stay quiet after all that's been done?
"I'm going to teach Joan a lesson."
I made up my mind. My name is Alice Stevens, 35 years old. I'm a full-time homemaker. Married for 10 years, my husband, Thomas, and I lead a peaceful life. We have a 7-year-old daughter. Her name is Mia. She's a real sweetheart, our pride and joy. Just a little while ago she was going to kindergarten, but now I'm dropping off my daughter, who's become an elementary school student, at school again today.
"Take care, sweetie."
Mia, living her life happily, had been giving me strength without me even realizing it. Indeed, children grow up incredibly fast. One day she'll become an adult before I know it. Thinking about her having a boyfriend, getting married, and leaving our home makes me sad, but if that's the path Mia chooses, I won't stop her. Although I ponder such things, when I think about it calmly, Mia is still only 7. We still have plenty of time together. I decided to fill that time with as much love as possible. Since we don't have many children in our family, Mia has always been the center of affection. Joan, my mother-in-law, was one of those who adored her. "Alice, how's Mia doing?"
"She's doing great."
"Is she using the notebook I got her?"
"Yes, she loves it."
A week ago, Joan bought a notebook for Mia. When I told her that Mia was enjoying it, Joan seemed delighted. My father-in-law passed away a few years ago. Living alone in her house must be lonely. That's probably why every time she sees me, Joan always asks about Mia and Thomas. "Talked to my mother-in-law today. She was asking about you and Mia."
"That's just like her.
Thomas seemed pleased when I told him about the conversation with Joan. That was a few months ago. A new change had come about in our family. Unbelievably, we were having another child. This came to be a few weeks after Mia turned 8. From the examination results, we found out it was a girl. When we broke the news to the kids during dinner, Mia stopped eating, her eyes sparkling.
A little sister? Yes, Mia, you're gonna be a big sister.
When I said that, Mia was overjoyed, raising her arms in celebration. Seeing this, Thomas too seemed delighted.
A girl. That's awesome.
Whether it was a boy or a girl didn't matter one bit. We were just happy to welcome another life into our family. That day, the conversation revolved around this new life. Mia was especially excited about becoming a big sister. We spent the evening imagining what it would be like once our family grew to 4, places we would like to visit, things we would like to do. The next day, I decided to visit Joan, who had always been good to us, and tell her about our new child. When I arrived, Joan greeted me with a warm smile.
So, you're having another baby. Congratulations.
Thank you. Joan blessed us with a beaming smile. So, is it a boy? It's a girl. I was certain that Joan would be thrilled. I figured she would shower the new baby with love, just like she did with Mia. I was excited to see her reaction. But to my surprise, Joan's face fell into a clear frown. Oh, I see, a girl. I was taken aback by her upset attitude. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Just as I was about to break the silence, I actually had something to do. Okay, you should go. Unexpectedly, she asked me to leave. I was so taken aback that I left without being able to ask why she had turned upset. Was it something I said? That was the only thing that crossed my mind. Could she have been upset about the baby's gender? No, that couldn't be it. After all, Mia is a girl too and Joan adores her. Could the problem lie with me then? On the drive back home, I kept wondering what might have upset Joan. I came home with a heavy heart and began doing my chores. In the afternoon, I went to pick up Mia from school. How was school? What did you do today? I asked my usual questions. Usually, Mia would react with joy, but today was different. She stared at my face. Then, she said simply,
Mom, you don't seem well today.
Mia then placed her hand on my head. I wondered if she was imitating me. Yet, I was impressed. She observes people so well. I tried not to show my troubled mood, but it seemed like Mia had seen right through me. I hugged Mia and stroked her head. Fast forward about 2 months. There was another change in our family. Surprisingly, Joan wants to live with us. The reason was because I was pregnant and she wanted to help with household chores and taking care of Mia. There had been an awkward silence since the day I announced the gender of the baby, but her offer to move in and help lightened my mood. I wasn't disliked after all. I was hopeful that living together with Joan would deepen our bond. I was harboring such faint hopes. Originally, Thomas had a good relationship with Joan, so he seemed happy about the idea of living with his mother again after so long. If Joan and I didn't get along, it would surely trouble Thomas. I steeled myself and began preparations to live with Joan. But my hopes did not come true. Joan seemed to harbor some resentment towards me. Since we started living together, her demeanor had been rather cold, and she would pull faces at the meals I cooked and the chores I did. She had initially said she wanted to help with the chores, but since we started living together, she hadn't lifted a finger. She just kept bossing me around.
What's with this food? It's too plain. I wonder how Thomas puts up with this kind of food. I bet he has a complaint or two.
If you say so. I have never received a complaint from Thomas. But maybe it wouldn't be strange if he had some complaints. As I thought about the meals I've prepared so far, Joan smirked and spat out these words. Maybe he's got another woman on the side, you never know. Even as a joke, I didn't want to hear such things. Thomas would be fine. I believed that, but when I heard it out loud, I was taken aback. Seeing me downcast, Joan just laughed even more. And to add insult to injury, Joan told me,
"A woman like you will be dumped sooner or later. Just be prepared."
She then proceeded to eat the meal I'd prepared, which she'd said smelt of poverty. She was clearly making faces as if it tasted awful. I wish she wouldn't bother eating it if she's going to be like that. I could painfully feel my mental state being chipped away by Joan's words and actions. Fortunately, Joan was very kind to Mia. Mia seemed to be fond of her, which was a relief. But I couldn't shake off the suspicion that Joan might be doing something to Mia when I wasn't around. I found myself harboring such doubts. I had subtly asked Mia what kind of conversations she was having with Joan. But Mia seemed to enjoy talking about school and study, things like that. Complicating matters, Joan played the role of the good mother-in-law in front of Thomas. "Alice dear, is there anything bothering you? Please feel free to talk to me about anything. Thank you." Without any proof, opposing her here would only be disadvantageous. I managed to force a smile and listen to Joan's talk. However, 4 months after we started living together, my belly was getting bigger, and honestly, I was getting tired of dealing with Joan. If I felt ill and fell asleep on the sofa, she'd wake me up and scold me for not doing housework. When I couldn't serve a decent meal because I couldn't stand the smell of food, she would bring up her own pregnancy and tell me how incompetent I was as a wife. I was fed up with this life. I knew it was late, but I made up my mind and decided to consult Thomas. Can we talk a little about your mom?" "Mom? What's up?" I told Thomas how Joan had been treating me. It was painful to remember everything that had happened so far. "I didn't realize that. I'm really sorry." Thomas believed what I said. And then he told me a surprising fact. "Actually, Mom has always been stubborn, or should I say bad-tempered. If something doesn't go her way, she gets upset right away. I hadn't noticed because it hadn't happened lately, and I'd let my guard down. I'll talk to her." I hadn't imagined that Joan had such a personality. With my tired mind, I thanked Thomas. But Joan's attitude did not change. In fact, it might have gotten worse than before. The frequency of her ordering me around increased, and lately, she even stopped making her own drinks. "Joan, can't you at least make your own drink?"
"Shut up. Don't give me orders. I don't care if you're pregnant or what, you're a housewife, and it's only natural for you to do everything around the house. When I was pregnant."
And so began Joan's self-praise. "You and I are different people, so our hardships must be different too." I wanted to tell her off, but I just didn't have the energy. I continued to listen to Joan's story so as not to upset her. Living that way, I had a strong ally besides Thomas. That ally was Mia. It seemed Mia could sense my mood. It was astonishing how perceptive she was for an 8-year-old. Of course, I was aware of how unfair it was to make a child worry about me, and I felt guilty. But I couldn't bring myself to cheer up. That's when Mia spoke up.
"Mom, are you okay? You seem down."
"Do I?"
"Yeah, you're not smiling at all."
It seemed she sensed something from my facial expressions and my mood. I apologized for making her worry, but Mia, with a smile on her face, said,
"I'll protect you if anything happens, Mom. You don't have to worry about anything."
When did she grow up to be such a reliable kid? While I was happy as a parent, I also had mixed feelings. After that, Mia began to look after me more. Mia had begun to keep her distance from Joan. Perhaps she'd witnessed Joan shouting at me. Joan tried to win Mia over, but when she couldn't control her as she wished, Joan started acting cold towards Mia. What kind of adult does that? Such a selfish person. I was disgusted, but if Joan ever harmed Mia, it would be too late. I began to pay more attention to Mia.
"Mom, are you okay? Tired? I can help you with the dishes."
After that, Mia began to help out even more. "Thanks for your help."
"Well, you're pregnant. It looks hard."
Mia happily picked up the dishes from the drying rack and started wiping them. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Joan's face looking very displeased. She probably didn't like that we were helping each other. I didn't care. If she had something to say, she should just say it with her usual gusto. I thought about this as I worked with Mia. Several months later, my due date was approaching. When I gave birth to Mia, there were no particular issues, but this time, due to the stress, I was not feeling well and had to be hospitalized early. The one I was worried about was Mia. If she were to be victimized by Joan while I was away, it would be unbearable. After some thought, I came up with a plan. The plan was to have Mia come to the hospital after school. It might be a burden on her, but luckily, the school and the hospital are within a reasonable walking distance. If Thomas could pick her up after work, both Mia and I would feel at ease. After all, there would be no issue with Joan being home alone. She should be doing whatever she likes. I proposed to Thomas and Mia, and both of them agreed. 1 week after the proposal. Finally, the day of my hospitalization arrived.
Mama, I'm coming to visit you.
Thank you, I'll be waiting. I sent Mia off as usual and started making the final preparations to go to the hospital. Joan, who had been watching, seemed grumpy as always, but today she seemed somewhat happy.
Finally, the day has come. I wish you would just not come back.
Say whatever you want. This hospitalization was brought forward because of you, you know.
Huh? I haven't done anything, have I?
The stress at home caused my health to deteriorate. It's all because you keep complaining. Knowing that I won't see her for a while, I vented all the things I had been holding back.
I'm the one complaining. I haven't said anything. When I was pregnant.
I'm tired of that story. Tell it to someone else.
You're an ungrateful woman. You should listen to what I say.
I ignored Joan's rant and continued with my preparations. Eventually, even Joan, who had been making a fuss, seemed to realize it was futile and disappeared without a trace. When I looked at the clock, it was almost noon. I grabbed my bag in a hurry and headed to the hospital. Life became quite comfortable after being hospitalized. I didn't have to hear any complaints from anyone and didn't have to do any housework. Although I was worried about giving birth, it was far better than my usual life. Once I give birth, Joan will probably leave in a hurry. No, it would be a problem if she doesn't leave. I need to discuss with Thomas and somehow create some distance. I really want to get back to living just with my family. I was absent-mindedly thinking about this on my hospital bed. At that time, I saw a short shadow in the ward. It was Mia.
Mama, I'm here.
Welcome, have a seat. Mia happily took a seat. Then, she slowly took out a piece of paper from her backpack.
What's this? So cute. I drew this today. It's a picture of you and the baby that's gonna be born.
Mia must be really looking forward to the baby. I couldn't help but appreciate Mia, who had drawn such a cute picture.
Thank you, it's really good. I feel better.
Perhaps because she was praised, Mia was unusually shy. But honestly, she's really good. I can't help but think Mia has many talents. Is that just parental bias? Mia took out some worksheets and a pencil case from her backpack and began to do her homework. Several hours later. It was about the time it got dark outside. Thomas came to my hospital room. After a brief chat with Thomas, he and Mia left for home. I heard Joan has been quiet recently. Apparently, she's still looking grumpy with her brows furrowed all the time. They laughed, saying that no one approaches her. About a week of living like that passed. Finally, it was time to give birth. I was extremely anxious, but before I knew it, I was put under anesthesia, and when I woke up, the baby was born. Thomas and Mia were in the hospital room with the baby. They both looked happy that I had woken up. Our new life is about to start. I couldn't contain my excitement. The baby was so cute.
Really? I can't wait to see him.
Since I can't move yet, meeting my baby face to face will have to wait. She must be adorable. Looking forward to that, I awaited the day. 10 days after giving birth, I was able to be discharged from the hospital without any issues. On the day of discharge, Thomas came to pick me up. With his support, I got into the car with the baby.
Are you okay? Can I start the car?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks. As the car Thomas was driving swayed, we headed home. Starting a new life is great, but there were things that made me anxious. That would be Joan. She must be at home. I don't expect her to love the baby unconditionally. I have to do everything I can to protect this child. As I was thinking about various things, we arrived home and opened the door. I'm home. But something felt off. There was no sign of anyone. And the living room, which could be seen from here, seemed a bit more spacious than before. Thomas also seemed to feel a bit strange, and as we cautiously peeked into the living room, our house was entirely empty.
What's going on?
This is. Baffled at first, we quickly guessed who could have done this. It must have been Joan. This did my mother-in-law.
My mom!
What should we do first? We should contact Joan, but I felt the need to get in touch with Mia first. I immediately texted Mia.
Where are you now?
No response came for a while. I was worried, but then I realized she would be in school right now. There had been no word of her missing school, so she should be in a situation where she can't access her phone.
Mia's at school.
Ah, right, of course. We were both too anxious. The lack of response was understandable. Just then, our phone chimed with a notification. The sender was, to our surprise, Mia. Who are you?
I don't have a mom. What?
What? Thomas, who had been looking at the screen with me, also blurted out in surprise. What on earth is happening? An unexpected reply from Mia, saying she had no mother. Everything was strange. We tried to call her quickly, but she didn't pick up. The only message we got from Mia was, "Don't call me. I'm selling that house. My grandmother says you should leave as soon as possible. We need to go to her house right now and confront my mom." We quickly got ready and headed towards Joan's house. When we arrived and Thomas rang the doorbell, Joan came out immediately. What's the rush?
Mom, what's the deal with our house?
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. You also used Mia's phone without her permission, didn't you?
Joan continued to feign ignorance. In her right hand, Joan firmly grasped Mia's cell phone. Joan, that's Mia's phone, isn't it? Why do you have it? I'm just holding on to it. Well, can we take a look then? If you're just holding on to it, you shouldn't have sent any messages. You know, we got a message from Mia's phone just a while ago. As I pressed her, Joan gradually started to frown. Anyways, let's get inside. We can talk about it there. When Thomas said so, Joan, who seemed to have given up, led us into the room. We sat on the sofa and started to inquire about the room and Mia. But Joan remained silent. She carelessly threw Mia's cell phone and started to cross her legs.
How many times have I told you not to mess with Alice and Mia? Between that and the mysterious message from Mia, I can only think that you're up to something, Joan. Yes, that includes your current attitude. Whenever things don't go your way, you get in a foul mood, just like you always have. It's embarrassing. Just stop it. Embarrassing.
In the end, the conversation was at a standstill. It wasn't Thomas who was in the wrong. It was Joan, who refused to say anything. Out of frustration, I intervened. How long are you going to act like a child? You really are immature. I bet a newborn could communicate better than you. Don't you get it? We're saying that we know you're up to something from the moment you sent that weird message with Mia's phone. I didn't give Joan a chance to talk back, and I said things that tore at her pride. Joan, who fell right into it, openly showed her anger.
Childish? Me? What are you talking about? Yes, I used Mia's phone to send the message and I even cleared out the house. I wanted to teach you a harsh lesson.
At Joan's sudden change, I couldn't help but furrow my eyebrows. Then, Joan continued her rant.
Listen, the whole problem is that you only give birth to girls. I wanted a son to carry on the Joan family name. And Thomas, how dare you lecture your mother? I didn't do anything wrong. It's all Alice's fault for not being able to do anything.
That's when it all clicked. Ever since I announced my second pregnancy, she was in a foul mood, and she had a short temper because I didn't give birth to a boy.
No, it's not Alice's fault. It's all because of you, Mom. You.
Joan, having been harshly criticized by her own son, was becoming redder with anger.
Do you even understand how shameful your actions are? I've been saying it, haven't I? I did nothing wrong.
As usual, Joan didn't bend her opinion. Thomas, after a moment of thought, looked straight at Joan and said,
All right, if that's what you're going to say, then I have something to say too. What is it? Spit it out.
I'm cutting ties with you, Mom.
Ties?
The moment she heard Thomas's words, Joan's complexion noticeably changed. She probably didn't expect her own son to cut ties with her.
Wait a minute. Please reconsider. After all the havoc you've wreaked on our family, you've got some nerve. I won't change my mind. I'll make sure our relatives know just how terrible a person you are too. No way. Hold on a minute. And what happened to our furniture at home?
Indeed, where did all the furniture go? There was quite a lot of it, and it couldn't possibly have been managed by Joan alone.
I gave all the furniture to the junk removal service. I wanted to upset you, but I only wanted to annoy you a little. What were you thinking? You probably used Dad's inheritance to do this. It's unfair to Dad to hire such services.
Indeed, he would not have wanted what he left behind to be used for such spite. I can't help but feel Joan is childish.
Then give us the money to replace the furniture, Mom. It's not our fault. I can't. Replacing furniture. You sold the furniture to the service on your own, right? We don't need to spend our money. Please listen to my last request.
As Thomas implored, Joan dropped her gaze, looking utterly dejected. After that, Joan replaced the furniture, they severed ties, and the matter was resolved. Having lost her connection to Thomas, Joan reportedly lost all her spirits. According to a relative who visited her after hearing Thomas's story, her atmosphere was entirely different from before. That relative said,
She was always quite stubborn. Maybe she learned her lesson this time?
So even relatives perceived her that way. Hopefully, this will prompt her to reconsider how she lives her life. Our family is living happily in the house we have been living in. We will no longer be bothered by Joan. We're able to fully engage with our family, and it's fulfilling. Mia watches over the baby with concern, which is adorable. She seems to want to play with them soon. Right. That's what a warm family is. Through this incident, I felt the kindness and reliability of Thomas and Mia. How much have these two supported me? I want to give my all to repay them from now on.
You're still here? You reek of old age, go home already.
This harsh outburst came from our oldest son's wife at their housewarming party. My husband and I, who had come to celebrate our son's new home, were shocked by her audacity. Our son got up from his seat. He must have been trying to calm his wife down. But beside me, my husband muttered quietly,
Shall we bring this house down?
At his words, our daughter-in-law's arrogant smile turned into a surprised gasp. Little did she know at the time that it wasn't just the house that was at stake, but her entire life as well. My name is Jacqueline Green. I'm 64 years old. I married my husband, Sam, and moved into his family home where we lived a contented life. We were blessed with 2 sons, Robert and Ted. Both of them have grown up to have families of their own and are doing well. As for Sam and me, all we want is to live out our remaining years in peace and happiness. However, there's one little thing that bothers us. It's our oldest son's wife, Alice. From the moment I first met her, I didn't have a good impression. Alice was 24 when she first came over to introduce herself before marrying our son. Although she greeted us at the door with a hello, there was no smile on her face.
Let me see, you're Alice, right?
As she hadn't introduced herself, I asked my son just to be sure. At my question, Alice scowled. What? Does Robert have other women? Both Robert and I were taken aback.
What are you talking about? Of course not.
Robert hastily reassured her.
Well, then why did you need to confirm my name?
But Alice started to argue right there on the doorstep.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
I nervously tried to calm the situation. Even though she was young, I couldn't help but think she lacked common sense, but hoped that time in marriage would improve things. That's what I thought at the time. Both families met, and everything proceeded smoothly. Alice's parents seemed like very nice people. They run a small electrical shop together, and they gave off a good vibe. I thought positively that Alice's initial behavior was perhaps due to her love for Robert. After their wedding, the couple moved to an apartment nearby. A few years later, our younger son, Ted, also decided to get married. It was a bit of a shotgun wedding. At the time, Ted was still in college, and his bride-to-be, Megan, was 20 and working at home after finishing high school. Honestly, we were worried. We had no idea what kind of girl was going to come into our lives, but when we first met Megan, she came with a gift and introduced herself politely at the door. I was surprised. Although we had thought that Alice's behavior was due to her youth, Megan, who was even younger, was very polite and respectful. There were some concerns about how their relationship began, but Megan seemed like a wonderful and kind girl. In the time leading up to their wedding, Megan visited us many times. She always offered to help out around the house. Of course, we couldn't let her do that, but we were incredibly touched by her thoughtfulness. The second son's wife's family owned a small construction company. The second son, who was still in college, decided to drop out and start working there. And then, a beautiful baby girl was born to the couple. When the baby turned 6 months old, they decided to hold a belated wedding ceremony. Of course, the eldest son and his wife attended the ceremony. However, the eldest son's wife looked sullen the whole time. Despite being a part of the family, she was constantly on her phone, never leaving her seat. Both my husband and I wanted to talk to her, but we could tell she gave off a vibe that said, "Don't talk to me." The wedding ceremony went smoothly, but the problem arose after that. Since they have a small baby, they decided not to have an after party. So we suggested, why not have a small after party at our house? The second son and his wife were thrilled. We prepared snacks and appetizers, and the eldest son and his wife joined us at our house. However, a commotion ensued there.
That was a lovely wedding. Megan looked beautiful,
said the eldest son. Of course, those kind words made the atmosphere pleasant. But it was the eldest son's wife who completely shattered the calm atmosphere.
What are you saying? Who are you calling beautiful? Are you cheating on me?
She angrily confronted her husband. Everyone was stunned by her overreaction. But I quickly snapped out of it and tried to calm her down, saying, "Alice, calm down. Robert didn't mean it that way." But it seems like that was a mistake. Now I became the target of her anger. Alice glared at me and shouted,
"How did you raise him to be such a cheater? Isn't it your fault for raising him this way?"
And then she lunged at me.
"Alice, calm down. Alice, please stop. Enough is enough."
The children and my husband stepped in to restrain Alice. I immediately told Megan to take the baby somewhere safe and asked her to leave the room. Looking at Alice, who was panting heavily from her outburst, I was sure. Alice must dislike all of us, no, everyone involved with Robert. She sees only Robert, for better or worse. We decided it would be better for Robert's sake to distance ourselves from them. And so we have kept a minimal relationship with them up to now. After the incident, I told Robert, "Don't you think it might be better to divorce?" To which he replied, "I've thought about that too." But when I mentioned it, Alice apologized in tears. After receiving words of apology from her, both my husband and I decided to leave the matter to the two of them. Despite the ups and downs, our eldest son and his wife celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. Since they didn't have children, we didn't have many opportunities to meet with our eldest son and his wife, but we figured it was better to go on without any confrontations causing issues. Both my husband and I thought the same. Then one day, our eldest son contacted us. He said that he had decided to start his own business, focusing on the development of a game he had been working on as a hobby. In other words, our eldest son was going to be the CEO. He said he didn't need a large office to develop his app game, but he would hire a few employees and each of them would work from home. Because there would occasionally be a need for meetings, he told us he was planning to build a new house with a small meeting room and his own workspace. My husband and I were very happy to hear that our eldest son was turning his hobby into his career and looking towards the future. And a few months later, a mansion was completed. We were invited to the housewarming party along with our second son's family. It had been several years since we last met our eldest son's wife. But she was already a fine adult. I thought there wouldn't be any problems like before. Thinking that, we brought our congratulations and visited our eldest son's home.
Hello, excuse us.
When I rang the bell, my eldest son came out to greet us. When he said that, we were guided inside the house. The eldest son who greeted us said, "This is the conference room. This is the workspace. And this is the living area. It's properly locked." And led us to the living room while showing us around the house.
Oh, it's lovely.
I looked around the room. Following behind me were my husband and the family of our second son, both of whom were following me with a smile. A meal was prepared in the living room. However, I didn't see my eldest son's wife.
Where is Alice?
I asked my eldest son. But he didn't want to talk about her. In the end, we started eating without her, and my husband and second son each gave their housewarming gifts to our eldest son.
You didn't have to do all this.
My eldest son was grateful, but he accepted with thanks, saying it was a celebration. The second son's family had one more child since then, and the older child was already in elementary school. The younger child was still 2 years old. Both of them were excited about the new house. That's when it happened. There was a noise upstairs, followed by the sound of footsteps and the sound of someone coming down the stairs.
What? Alice was here?
I called out to my eldest son, but he didn't answer. Then, when she entered the living room, she frowned when she saw us.
Alice, hello, it's been a while.
I called out to her like that. But she was still looking sullen as usual. And then she said to us,
"You're still here? You reek of old age. Go home already."
Alice's harsh words froze the warm atmosphere in the room.
Hey, Alice. How can you say such a thing?
Robert chastised his wife Alice. But it was clear Alice had no intention of taking his reprimand to heart.
Well, it's the truth, isn't it? Our brand new house is getting tarnished because of them. I told you not to invite them over. And what, are you some big shot CEO now? Hanging around with some old codger who keeps working past retirement, and people who are so average they had a shotgun wedding after dropping out of college. We live in completely different worlds.
I was speechless, and so was my second son's family. Even my grade school grandchild was struck dumb in surprise. I had made various excuses, attributing her behavior to her youth or excessive affection for my eldest son, but that was my mistake. Something essential to her humanity is missing. She lacks warmth and kindness towards others. It's not that she loves my eldest son the most, she loves herself above all else, and values her status as the wife of a company president more than anything. I was furious. I couldn't stand silent anymore. As I was about to retort, my husband, who had been listening to the argument between my eldest son and his wife, let out a sigh. My husband, usually calm and gentle, said,
"Maybe we should just tear this house down."
At my husband's words, my eldest son, second son's family, and I involuntarily looked at him. Nobody could believe that such words had come out of my husband's mouth. In the midst of this, only my eldest son's wife let out a surprised gasp. "What? Do you even understand what you're saying?" Alice, my eldest son's wife, said.
"Of course I do. A house designed by me and built by Ted might be better off not existing," my husband replied. "What?"
Alice was stunned at my husband's words.
"I'm sure you, as the president's wife, wouldn't be satisfied with such a house designed by an old man and built by someone beneath ordinary. Our worlds are different. You should just move out.
My husband's calm tone was ironically scary. Knowing this, none of us could interrupt the conversation between my husband and Alice.
What do you mean?
Alice started to tremble at his words. And she glared at my eldest son. Noticing her gaze, my eldest son sighed and said to Alice,
"It means exactly what he says. This house was designed by my father, a top architect. And the contractor is Megan's family home, with the foreman being Ted. I may hold a title and be a president, but I neither have substantial wealth nor reputation yet. Thanks to my family, I could own such a wonderful house. Rather, among us, we are the most ordinary, or even beneath ordinary."
Alice turned pale at my eldest son's words. She must not have known. But even if she didn't know, didn't she ever wonder? There's no way our eldest son's income and savings alone could have built such an impressive house. My husband didn't even charge for the design work, and there's hardly any profit for our second son's in-laws, who run a construction company. I can't thank enough to our second son's in-laws, who helped us simply because we're family. Yet our eldest son's wife has the audacity to act pompous just because of her husband's status. Who does she think she is?
Saying that we're less than average?
Our eldest son's wife repeated his words as if she couldn't believe them. You can see the despair on her face. Indeed, my husband still works for a company even after his retirement, but that's because the company asked him to stay on as a top-tier architect. Our second son is being groomed as the next boss at his wife's family business. He gets good treatment not just from his co-workers but also from the business partners that his wife's family has had relationships with for years, and even though he's not yet the president, he's working hard for the company.
Yeah, in this group, I'm the bottom of the barrel. A wife who misunderstands that and looks down on people is even lower."
With those words, our eldest son laughed, looking at his wife, whose face had turned blue as if she was about to cry at any moment. Our second son also started laughing involuntarily, but the atmosphere was anything but pleasant. Our second son's wife quickly picked up on the mood and took their child to a nearby dollar store. She's really good at reading the room and is very considerate.
"Apologize to Dad and Mom properly, if you understand."
Our eldest son stopped laughing and yelled at his wife.
"What? Am I really that bad? You're always on their side. It's only natural for a husband to side with his wife."
But our eldest son's wife, who can't accept the reality, fights back.
"Sure, that's right. But it's also a husband's job to point out when his wife is wrong. You're wrong. If you have a complaint, quit being my wife right now."
Seeing our eldest son truly angry, she must have realized that she was in trouble. Our eldest son's wife quickly changed her attitude and conspicuously knelt down.
"I didn't know. You never told me."
She's acting like a tragic heroine. And then, as if intoxicated by her own performance, she turned to my husband and me and began to apologize. "I'm really sorry for the rude things I've said." We watched our eldest son's wife's act with a blank expression, not even feeling a shred of sympathy. Her overly dramatic apology didn't touch our hearts at all, and it's too late to apologize anyway. We had no intention of accepting her superficial apology, just like last time. Seeing his wife in this state, our eldest son asked me,
"Dad, Mom, what do you think? Am I terrible? Am I doing something wrong?"
My husband looked at me. He must have realized that I had something to say to her. I let her have it. I couldn't forgive her for her previous remarks, no matter what.
"No, Robert. I think you're right. If a wife disrespects her family, it's a husband's duty to correct her."
I will reflect and change my attitude. Our eldest son's wife kept up her melodramatic act. I couldn't help but be exasperated.
"No, Alice. This is not the first time you've been disrespectful to us, is it? Haven't you been told this every time by Robert? No, Robert must have pointed out your words every time, right? What about that?
At my words, our eldest son's wife bit her lip, turning pale. I told her,
I don't need someone who belittles my husband and son in the Green family. It would be better for both of us to cut ties. Jacqueline.
A desperate voice from our eldest son's wife. In our 15 years of marriage, it was the first time she called my name.
We live in different worlds.
I threw her words back at her. At those words, our eldest son's wife collapsed on the spot and froze as if her spirit had left her body. She might be regretting her actions a little bit. Being told that we live in different worlds must have been a significant blow to our eldest son's wife. Even though they were her own words, I wonder why she was so affected by them. Although I thought that, my second son said, Mom, you were really cool. It seemed to be quite a shocking remark for Alice. In the end, my eldest son, Robert, decided to divorce his wife, Alice. Alice, who loved Robert so much. When Robert proposed, if you want to stay with me, Alice, you need to start working and contribute to the mortgage for this house we got at a reduced rate, Alice turned bright red with anger. It seemed that at the time of their marriage, Robert had told her, I want my wife to be a homemaker. Alice, who was under the impression that being a homemaker would mean living an easy life, started to feel insecure, worried that her status might be taken away by someone. Despite this, she decided to forsake personal growth and started to bind Robert instead of supporting him as a wife. On top of that, she decided not to have children, apparently because it would be too much trouble. Alice loved herself more than she loved Robert. With Robert becoming the CEO, her arrogance only grew, and perhaps her overblown pride has finally been broken. I'm sorry, I'll do anything, please forgive me. Alice begged, sobbing, at the end. But when Robert suggested, all right, then Alice should start working and contribute to the household expenses. It was disrespectful to say such things when we're getting it for a reduced price. Isn't that sincerity? Alice turned bright red and started to scream and get angry.
Are you telling me to work? That's not what we promised when we got married. Isn't this fraud?
Robert seemed utterly dumbfounded at her words. For a few years now, Robert had realized that Alice was more attached to this comfortable lifestyle of not working than she was to him. Thinking this couldn't go on, he had subtly suggested several times that she find a job or a hobby and get out of the house. Then, are you cheating on me? She would accuse Robert, and in recent years, she even nagged at him just for talking to women at work. This affected his work and the business. If he mentioned family matters, it would sour her mood, and of course, he wasn't even talking about home. Their conversation itself had decreased. Robert regretted his lack of judgment and allowing her to have her way for 15 years, but he could only think that it was good that he had realized this now. Life still has a long way to go. Robert can start over as many times as he wants. Alice, who was kicked out by Robert, reluctantly returned to her parents' home. Her parents, taken by surprise, contacted Robert. That's when they first learned about the situation. Alice's parents, being sensible people, didn't excuse their daughter's actions. Knowing the insult to us, Alice's parents brought her and a box of sweets to apologize. Now, apologize. Alice's parents scolded her in front of us.
No, it's okay, an apology won't undo the divorce.
My husband said. Upon hearing that, Alice's parents said, of course. We couldn't ask such a wonderful family to accept a daughter who has been so rude. We'll re-educate her properly. We're sorry for the trouble we've caused. We really had no idea, we're truly sorry. Alice watched her parents in a bad mood. Alice's parents, furious at her attitude, forced her to apologize. It was like a grade schooler's apology. But unlike a grade schooler, forcing mature parents to apologize for their grown-up daughter's actions was pitiful.
Really, it's okay,
I said, feeling sorry for Alice's parents. Afterwards, Alice refused to return to her parents' home and was forcibly made to rent an apartment nearby. She started working to pay her own rent. Apparently, our second son's wife, Megan, spotted her working at the supermarket. She was being scolded by a student part-timer. Being scolded by a part-timer younger than herself must be a good lesson for her. Her parents are watching over her life, making sure she doesn't cause trouble for others in the future. Compared to before, her life must feel quite constricted, but even being able to live like this is fortunate. Alice, who until now had only scorned others without realizing her own happiness. She will need some harsh realities and difficulties until she can appreciate her current situation. Afterwards, my husband and I, free from worry, are living a peaceful retirement. We are a little worried about Robert being single, but his brother Sam's family is nearby. They are brothers who truly respect each other. I am confident they will support each other when necessary. Robert's company also seems to be doing well. He is steadily increasing the number of employees and continuing to grow his business. Seeing Robert now, free to pursue his passion, he seems more lively and vibrant compared to before. Without having to walk on eggshells around anyone, we are now able to communicate freely with our children, and they even take us on a vacation once a year. I am constantly grateful for such a luxurious everyday life. By recognizing the small happiness in everyday life, I feel that life itself has been a joy. Both my husband and I are leading our lives in such a way that, when it's time for us to depart, we can truly say we've had a happy life.